Hi everybody, it's Boo Ray Perry from Tampa, Florida, and today we are going to talk about Fuji's Classic Chrome film simulation and what makes it so great. All right, let's start off by talking about what makes Fuji's film simulations different than, say, a filter or something you might do on Instagram or a thing you buy for Photoshop or Lightroom or Capture One that just changes your image. The main thing that makes the difference between Fujifilm's film simulations and these sorts of things that you can do after the fact to your image is that Fujifilm's simulations are a deeper dive into changing the color or the look of your images. They look at every single color. They will move those colors on saturation, on tone, on contrast, and they go at every single one of them. I mean, the internet is full of people who come up with recipes. You go find a recipe for doing this particular look on your pictures in Photoshop, but they never are going to be able to do it as well as Fuji does it, because Fuji gets into every single color and does it. And even if they can affect the colors the way that Fuji affects the colors, they don't have Fuji's history, because Fuji is the only major camera manufacturer that actually makes film. They still make film to this day. Of course, they've always made film. And so they know more about color science as it pertains to film than anybody who just knows the digital realm, right? They know what color looks like to the human eye when it's shot on film and then printed on paper. So they're very good at affecting that look. Most of their film simulations are actually based off of classic Fujifilm that you used to buy and put in your camera, except for Classic Chrome, which is the one that we're going to talk about today, and it is my favorite film simulation. Now, Classic Chrome is based off of, well, if you ask Fuji, they'll tell you that it's not based off of a film at all. But I think we all kind of know what film it's based off of. Fuji says when it comes to Classic Chrome that what they were looking for is they were looking for a film simulation that would be good for photojournalism, that would be good for street photographers. And when they sought out to make this simulation, what they were hoping to do was to mimic the look that a picture had when you would see it in the newspaper or, say, Life magazine or something like that. During the heyday of photojournalism, we're talking the 70s, the 60s, the 70s, right? Vietnam War and that sort of stuff. There was a look. When Life magazine was at its heyday and it was in every single dentist and doctor's office in the world and everybody read Life magazine every week, this was what the color looked like in Life magazine. This is what it looked like in black and white when it was in a newspaper, right? So they were trying to reproduce that look in a digital realm. And if you're reproducing that look, well, you're really reproducing Kodak Kodachrome film. Because Kodak Kodachrome film was probably the most used film of anybody in the world at that time. I mean, when I was working behind the camera counter at Montgomery Ward's, we only sold Kodak film. And I sold many a box of Kodak 100 Kodachrome or 200 or 400. So that's the look that they were trying to mimic, and they really did a good job. They really did. But when do you use it? Do you use it all the time? Do you just use it some of the time? That's what I really wanted to get in today. I want to talk about the colors. I want to talk about what it does to your images, and also when's the right time to use Fuji's Classic Chrome film simulation. All right, let's look at some images. Let's start with basics. Let's start with the standard film simulation, the default film simulation that Fuji has set up for all of their cameras, and it's called Provia. It might be Provia or Provia. I'm going to call it Provia. I actually looked online to see how to pronounce it, and I couldn't find anything. But we're going to call it Fujifilm's Provia, and this is their default simulation. So here's a picture of the sky behind my house with the Provia film simulation, standard film simulation. Now, let's see what it looks like with Classic Chrome. All right, definitely a change, right? So here's what they do with Classic Chrome. First of all, they tone down the magentas quite a bit, or for those of us who aren't hoity-toity, the purples. The purples, they turn down the purples or the magentas quite a bit. They also bring down the saturation in the yellows and the greens, and they boost a little bit of contrast, especially in the shadows. And remember, the idea is to make these images look the way that they looked when you saw them printed in a magazine or you saw them printed in the newspaper. And the thing about these sorts of images, and they said, by the way, that when they created Classic Chrome, they really wanted to pay attention to skies. The skies were one of the big things that they really wanted to affect, and it certainly affects this sky picture. But the thing about Classic Chrome is you don't notice how much magenta there is in a lot of images until Classic Chrome removes some of it. So this is Classic Chrome. Let's go back to the original, and now, see now the faint little bit of magenta that's in this sky, not to mention the whole thing seems to get softer, right? Because once we're out of Classic Chrome and going back to Velvia, we are losing that extra boost of contrast that Classic Chrome has. So this is Classic Chrome. If you really want to see the magenta, then go to another film simulation, go to Velvia, right? This is their most vivid film simulation, and the one that they say they recommend that this is good for landscapes, and this is a landscape. But now you can really see the purple and the magenta in this sky, and I'm sure there are a lot of landscape photographers who use Velvia all the time because you get this punch, you get this bright color, beautiful color. I use it sometimes, but I tend to fall back on this image a lot. I fall back on Classic Chrome. I like the way it looks. And before we move on, let me talk about why I like the way it looks. We need to talk about something called memory color, because memory color is very, very important when it comes to deciding what your images are going to look like. There is a difference between what a color is and what you think it is. There's a difference between what a color is and what you remember it to be. In other words, when you think of a color, or when you think of images that you've seen in your life, you don't necessarily remember the colors the same way the colors were displayed to your eye at the time. And Fuji is very much aware of this. They try to design their film simulations so that they give you an image that looks the way you remember it looking, or the way you think it should look. And for someone of a certain age, the world looks like Kodachrome, because I grew up with Kodachrome film. So when I go back and look at old pictures of my life and my family, when I look at even color slides, which are Kodachrome slides, there is a look to that color that is unique to the Kodachrome color. And that is what you see them replicating in the Classic Chrome. So it's interesting that Fuji or any camera can reproduce exact colors, but then we tweak those colors so that they look the way that our mind thinks they should look. And there's almost no right or wrong here. It's really a matter of personal preference. So let's take another image. Okay, so here's a picture of a fallen, it's an orange or a grapefruit. I don't know what it is. We have a tree in my backyard. It has a bunch of orange things on it. I don't pay much attention to it. But they fall on the ground. So this, again, is your generic Velvia standard color. Now, let's go to Classic Chrome. I like this better. And here's why. You see how it's toned down the greens, right? Let's click this. Wow. Now, look how green this was on the first picture. This is another thing that's interesting about when you start looking at color in different photographs, is that if you look at any photograph for more than 5 seconds, it looks fine. Your eyes adjust. And I think this is your memory color kicking in. You're looking at the picture, but your mind is telling you this is what it should look like to me. This is fine. This looks perfect. And then the minute you kick over to something else, you go, oh, that's very different. That's drastically different. But now if you look at this for 5 seconds or so, and you look at it for a while, and you go, yeah, this is nice. This is a great image. Now we're going to go back to the first one again. Oh my gosh, that's so green. Oh my gosh, it's so green and so soft, right? And that's why it's such a matter of personal choice, trying to pick what color and what film simulation that you want to use when you are using a Fuji camera. So this is Velvia Standard, and this is Classic Chrome, and this is Vivid. Whew. Now, for my money, this is too vivid, right? This is just too much. It's just too rich. But there are other people who will love this richness, and they will absolutely love it. But for me, I'm dominated by the green and the orange in this photo, and if that's what you're going for, that's great. But when I go to here, I start to notice here, I start to notice the browns more, and the boost of contrast separates things in my scene more. So again, I'm going to fall back on Classic Chrome with this photograph, which brings us to the third photograph and the real test of Classic Chrome. The headshot. I was lucky enough to get a top flight, very handsome model to pose for a session the other day so I could get some pictures to use for this particular video. This is Velvia Standard. This is a perfectly good color. This is what I look like, right? Velvia Standard. This is fine. Now, let's go to something else. But we're not going to go to Classic Chrome. We're going to go to Pro Neg High. Now, Pro Neg High and the Pro Neg Regular Standard and Pro Neg High, these two film simulations by Fuji are specifically designed for portrait work. They are specifically designed to give you good skin tones. And the longer you look at this image, the more you are going to be convinced that this is a great skin tone. And when you looked at the first one, you thought that was good too, right? But now look at this one. We looked at this one for a minute. That's a good skin tone. Now let's go back to the first one. Watch how pink I'm going to get. Right? When we first looked at it, you probably didn't think it was that red. Now, woo, it looks red. But if I stay here for a little while, it's going to look fine. So it's really tricky trying to pick the right color. But I will tell you that this color right here, if I am shooting professional headshots, modern headshots, and I want good, solid, modern color, then this is the color that I go with. I go with a Pro Neg High. But if I'm shooting something for fun, if I'm shooting something for myself, or if I'm shooting something that I want to be more dynamic, guess what? Once again, I go to Classic Chrome. And this is Classic Chrome. It's not greatly different from Pro Neg High, but it is different. And now that we've looked at it for a minute or two, we've taken a good look at it, I'm going to go back and watch how much more pink Pro Neg High is now compared. Right? So we'll go back to Classic Chrome. I like Classic Chrome because I like the punch it gives me. I like that it desaturates the face. And to be honest, I could even desaturate this a little bit more and be happy. But this is what we're going with right now. So I don't just like it. You like it too. Everybody likes it. And the reason I know everybody likes it is because Hollywood uses it all the time. There you go. See how everything has been tinted blue? Everything has been tinted blue and moved to a blue spectrum. But look at his face. See how it's been desaturated with color? It's been toned down. There's a lot of contrast in here. They're going for the Classic Chrome look. And they don't just do it here. Same thing here. Right? Look at Captain America here. Toned down. More. And if you really want to see a contrast, look at this picture. Everything is warm. Face is warm. Clothes are warm. Background is warm. Now go back here. Bam. Now which one of these is closer to Classic Chrome? And again, I'm going to turn it down just a little bit. I would actually probably even turn this saturation down just a little bit more to say there. And that gets me a little bit closer to that. Might want to add a little brown in there. But once again, if we go back to that original Velvia, watch how red I'm going to become. Oh, Lordy. When we first looked at this, we thought it was fine, right? We thought it was perfect. But now, it's unbelievably red. So it's really hard to make a choice. You kind of have to just go, you know what? I've decided this is my color, and I'm going to stick with it. And for me, and I don't know if it's because I'm older and because I have the memory of all of the things that I saw in magazines and newspapers when I was a kid. I don't know why, but for me, it's Classic Chrome. I just love the way that Classic Chrome looks. All right, so where does this leave us? Why is Fuji's Classic Chrome film simulation the very best film simulation that Fuji makes? Well, if we learned anything in looking at the images, it's that I really can't make that claim. Because what's the best film simulation is really what you think is the best film simulation. You can't say this is the #1 best film simulation any more than you could say this is the best film back in the day, because there were all these different types of film. You had Kodak, you had Fuji, and everybody had 40 different types of film, and so you couldn't just do that, right? Everybody, it was to each his own, and to each as they felt was right for them in that moment with what they were photographing. So all I can really say is, why is Classic Chrome the best film simulation for me? And for me, the reason is because of memory. It's all about memory. You see, the pictures that we take now, they're shot with digital cameras. which are all ones and zeros. And then we look at them on phones, or we look at them on screens on our desktop, ones and zeros. So we've never had a more accurate reproduction of true color than we do now in a digital age. But our life doesn't exist in true color. You know, it really doesn't. Not only is the world not in true color, it's in so many millions of shades and so many different tones and spectrums of light, etc. Not only is that the case, but our memory also doesn't exist in true color. It remembers things slightly different. It remembers things a certain way. And a lot of that memory comes from photographs. It comes from photographs that we have seen our entire life, even more so than actually seeing the real world. And Fuji's Classic Chrome seeks to reproduce that memory of what that color and that image looks like, the way I remember it, right? So for me, when I'm walking around and I've got my X100V with me and I'm just shooting pictures for fun of my family or whatever, it's Classic Chrome. I'm using Classic Chrome all the way. And almost anytime I just take a picture of myself, Classic Chrome. I like to desaturate those reds. I like to desaturate those greens and those yellows and get them down. I like a little more punch in my shadows. And all the images that you saw were shot with the camera set on full neutral. I didn't have any of the special, I didn't have contrast or anything turned up in the camera when I shot those images. So if you're not using Classic Chrome, give it a try. If you're young, then maybe you won't understand it. Maybe you'll think, well, Classic, it doesn't make sense. Why is it, the color's not quite right? And that's because maybe Classic Chrome isn't your memory color. Your memory color may be Velvia because you're younger and you grew up looking at digital camera images on digital devices. Everyone has to decide for themselves. For each, their own. But here's the best part. No matter what you choose, once you look at it for 5 seconds, it's going to be fine. It's going to look just great. Hey, listen, don't forget to check out my podcast. It's called Photobomb. And it's me and my friend Gary Hughes, and we've been doing it for 5 years. It's fantastic. You can find it anywhere that podcasts are found. And if you are interested in the gear that I carry, all my gear, my professional gear and my fun knock-around gear, all of it is listed on my website, and the link is going to be right there in the description for you. So go check out all my gear and all the accessories that I carry. And if you use one of those links and you buy something on Amazon, I get a couple of dollars, and it helps me to keep this channel alive. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.